Oswell E. Spencer was born into British nobility in the early 1900s, giving him a deep sense of elitism. While attending university, he befriended James Marcus and Edward Ashford. Their lives changed when they discovered the progenitor virus in Africa, an ancient virus with the potential to alter human biology. While Marcus pursued scientific discovery and Ashford focused on legacy, Spencer became obsessed with the idea of human evolution through selective superiority. To fund and conceal their research, Spencer co-founded the Umbrella Corporation, presenting it as a legitimate pharmaceutical company. In reality, Umbrella became a global powerhouse of illegal bioweapons development. Spencer authorized the creation of viral strains such as the T virus, which could reanimate the dead and mutate living organisms into bioorganic weapons. These experiments led directly to disasters like the Raccoon City outbreak, causing massive loss of life. Spencer viewed most of humanity as weak and disposable, believing only a select few were worthy of surviving in a new world he intended to create. His long-term vision was not just control, but transformation. He sought to guide evolution itself, reshaping humanity into a superior species under his rule. Spencer was also responsible for nurturing and selecting individuals such as Albert Wesker, whom he saw as potential successors or tools of his vision. Ironically, this decision led to his downfall. In Resident Evil 5, Spencer is finally confronted by Wesker, who learns the truth about his origins and Spencer's ambitions. Rather than becoming Spencer's heir, Wesker rejects him and kills him. Spencer dies before ever being able to fully see his dream come true. Albert Wesker's origins trace back to a secret eugenics program orchestrated by Oswell E. Spencer. As a child, he was taken and raised as part of the Wesker Project, where gifted children were groomed to become genetically superior leaders. Unlike others in the program, Albert excelled, displaying exceptional intelligence and emotional detachment from a young age. He eventually became a top researcher within the Umbrella Corporation. One of Wesker's most important early roles was as captain of the Special Tactics and Rescue Service Force, most notably referred to as STARS in Raccoon City, where he secretly acted as a double agent for Umbrella. During the events of the first Resident Evil game, he orchestrated the mansion incident to gather data on bioorganic weapons, betraying his team in the process. Seemingly killed by the tyrant he helped unleash, Wesker survived by injecting himself with an experimental virus, granting him superhuman abilities including enhanced speed, strength, and regenerative powers. From that point on, Wesker operated independently, no longer loyal to Umbrella but still pursuing its research for his own ends. He manipulated global events from the shadows, and his actions deeply contributed to a rapid increase of bioterrorism worldwide, destabilizing governments and causing countless deaths. After confronting Spencer, he rejected being merely a product of someone else's vision and decided to become the architect of humanity's future himself. He believed that viruses could be used to force human evolution, killing the weak while elevating the strong, himself included, to near godhood. In Resident Evil 5, Wesker plans to release the Ouroboros virus on a global scale. Unlike previous viruses, Ouroboros would only allow those deemed worthy to survive, effectively cleansing the world. Ultimately, Wesker is defeated by Chris Redfield, bringing an end to the most iconic villain in the Resident Evil franchise. T-00, who is often referred to as Mr. X, was part of the Tyrant line developed by the Umbrella Corporation. His origins begin with human subjects, typically prisoners or test candidates with rare genetic compatibility, who are infected with the T-virus. Most subjects mutate uncontrollably, but a small number successfully transform into tyrants, retaining enough structure to be weaponized. Unlike earlier tyrants, Mr. X is engineered for obedience and field efficiency. He is typically deployed wearing a limiter coat, which suppresses his mutations and gives him a more human appearance. This allows him to operate in urban environments with minimal immediate detection. His intelligence is limited, but he can follow orders, track targets, and navigate obstacles with relentless persistence. Mr. X's most notable role occurs during the Raccoon City outbreak in Resident Evil 2. Umbrella deploys multiple T-00 units into the city with a specific mission: eliminate surviving witnesses and retrieve the G-virus sample. Mr. X's role was to hunt down survivors such as Leon S. Kennedy and Claire Redfield. As he continues to sustain damage, Mr. X's limiter is destroyed, triggering further mutation and making him more aggressive and monstrous. This showcases the inherent flaw in Tyrant design. While controllable at first, they inevitably become increasingly unstable. Mr. X is ultimately destroyed during the events of Resident Evil 2. William Birkin was a child prodigy in his early life, which led him to being recruited at a young age into the Umbrella Corporation by James Marcus. His genius-level intellect quickly made him one of Umbrella's leading researchers, and he became deeply involved in studying the progenitor virus and its derivatives. After Marcus's death, Birkin rose even further, eventually taking over key research projects and establishing himself as a cornerstone of Umbrella's bioweapons division. His most significant achievement was the creation of the G-virus, a mutagen far more advanced and unpredictable than the T-virus. Unlike previous strains, the G-virus allowed its host to continuously evolve, adapt, and regenerate, often through violent mutation. However, Birkin's pride in his work became intertwined with paranoia. He feared Umbrella would take his research and eliminate him, as they had done to Marcus. This fear was ultimately justified. When Umbrella operatives attempted to seize the G-virus, Birkin was shot and mortally wounded. In a desperate act, he injected himself with the G-virus, triggering one of the most grotesque transformations in the series. His body began mutating uncontrollably, growing stronger but losing human form and sanity. In this state, he slaughtered the soldiers sent to retrieve his research and accidentally released the T-virus into Raccoon City's water supply, initiating the outbreak. As the events of Resident Evil 2 unfold, Birkin continues to mutate through several increasingly monstrous forms. Despite losing most of his humanity, fragments of his original instincts remain, specifically his desire to reproduce. He seeks out his daughter, Sherry Birkin, as a compatible host for the G-virus. In the end, Birkin is defeated by Leon S. Kennedy and Claire Redfield, and they save his daughter from his monstrous ambitions. Nemesis T-type was the result of a fusion between a tyrant host and a parasitic organism known as the Nemesis alpha parasite. This parasite was developed by the European branch of the Umbrella Corporation to enhance intelligence and obedience in bioorganic weapons. However, this process is highly unstable, and most attempts failed, with Nemesis being one of the few successful outcomes. While standard tyrants were powerful but limited in cognition, Nemesis was engineered to follow complex commands, use weapons, and adapt in combat. In Resident Evil 3, which takes place during the Raccoon City outbreak, Umbrella deployed Nemesis with a specific mission: eliminate all surviving members of STARS to cover up the corporation's involvement in the mansion incident. His most notable target is Jill Valentine, whom he relentlessly pursues throughout the game. Unlike other tyrants, Nemesis can use weapons and demonstrates problem-solving abilities, including navigating environments and setting ambushes. His focus on his mission is often expressed through the word STARS, which he vocalizes while hunting his targets. As Nemesis sustains damage, his body mutates further, eventually losing its humanoid form entirely. These later stages reveal the parasite's dominance, transforming him into increasingly grotesque and powerful forms. Ultimately, Nemesis is destroyed by Jill Valentine, ending his terrifying pursuit. Nicholai Ginovaef was born in the Soviet Union and is heavily implied to have had a background in military or special forces, possibly tied to the Spetsnaz after the Cold War. His upbringing in a harsh, unstable environment helped shape his worldview. Survival comes above all else, and loyalty is expendable. At some point, he became a mercenary and was recruited into the Umbrella Biohazard Countermeasures Service, most notably referred to as UBCS, a private military force operated by the Umbrella Corporation. Officially, the UBCS was deployed to rescue civilians during outbreaks, but in reality, it was often used as expendable personnel to gather combat data on bioorganic weapons. Nicholai, however, had a secret role. He was one of Umbrella's supervisors, tasked with monitoring the mission, collecting battle data, and ensuring that no loose ends, especially surviving witnesses, remained. During the events of Resident Evil 3, Nicholai reveals his true nature. While working alongside teammates like Carlos Oliveira, he secretly sabotages operations, kills fellow soldiers, and manipulates situations to maximize data collection. Nicholai is motivated purely by money, power, and survival, and he is willing to betray, kill, or abandon anyone if it increases his chances of success or payout. In the end, Nicholai loses his life, showcasing the immense flaws in his mindset. Jack Krauser began his professional life as a highly skilled US military operative, eventually becoming a member of an elite special forces unit. Known for his exceptional combat ability, discipline, and tactical intelligence, he earned a reputation as one of the best soldiers in the field. During this time, he formed a close partnership with Leon S. Kennedy, and the two developed a strong mutual respect. During a covert mission in South America, the operation went disastrously wrong and exposed Krauser to bioorganic threats, leaving him severely injured. This event shattered his faith in the military and the systems he once served. Feeling abandoned and physically weakened, Krauser became obsessed with regaining strength, no matter the cost. This obsession led him down a darker path. He sought out bioweapon enhancement, eventually aligning himself with Albert Wesker, who recognized his potential. Krauser later infiltrated the cult Los Illuminados as part of a larger plan to obtain a dominant Plaga parasite. During this time, Krauser willingly infected himself with the parasite, gaining enhanced strength, speed, and the ability to mutate his arm into a powerful blade-like weapon. In Resident Evil 4, Krauser is tasked with capturing Ashley Graham, the US president's daughter, with him seemingly serving the cult and the leader's plan to spread control through the Plaga parasite. However, Krauser's true loyalty is ambiguous. He ultimately seeks power for himself, viewing alliances as temporary means to an end. Krauser is ultimately defeated by the man he once was close to and admired greatly, Leon S. Kennedy. Osmund Saddler is one of the most mysterious villains in the mainline Resident Evil games. Although very little is known about his early life, it is clear that he emerged as the leader of Los Illuminados, a secretive cult operating in a remote region of Spain. At some point, Saddler discovered the Las Plagas parasite, an ancient organism capable of controlling hosts while preserving their intelligence. Recognizing its potential, he began extensive experimentation, refining the parasite into a tool for domination rather than just infection. Unlike the TRG virus, Plagas allowed for precise control over infected individuals. Saddler used this to build an obedient army of villagers, cultists, and enhanced soldiers, all completely loyal to him. Through this system, he effectively turned an entire region into his personal kingdom. His ultimate plan was global infiltration. By infecting key individuals, Saddler intended to control world leaders from within. This goal is more evident in his kidnapping of Ashley Graham, the US president's daughter. By infecting her with a dominant plaga, he planned to send her back to the United States, where she would unknowingly spread the parasite at the highest level of government, allowing Saddler to control global politics. Saddler presented himself as a prophet or savior, claiming the Las Plagas as a divine gift meant to unite humanity. In reality, this is a facade meant to manipulate followers and disguise his true goal, which is total domination. Throughout Resident Evil 4, Saddler operates as a puppet master, directing subordinates and repeatedly confronting Leon, taunting him and attempting to convert or control him through infection. Ultimately, Saddler mutates into a monstrous form after losing control of the situation and is defeated by Leon. His death stops the immediate threat, but his work proves that control-based bioweapons are a viable path for global domination. The Baker family, primarily Jack Baker, Margaret Baker, and their son Lucas Baker, were once a normal family living in rural Louisiana. Jack was a kind, hard-working father and husband, and they were known locally as decent if somewhat isolated people. Their lives changed when they discovered a wrecked tanker and rescued a mysterious young girl known as Eveline. This girl had powers that allowed her to infect others with a mold-like organism and control their minds, compelling them to see her as family. After bringing her home, the Bakers were gradually infected, losing their free will as Eveline's influence grew. Under Eveline's control, Jack and Margaret became grotesque, nearly immortal monsters, driven to capture and convert others into part of their twisted family. Jack became an unstoppable pursuer, Margaret mutated into an insect-like creature, and Lucas, while once infected, received a serum by agents from the Connections, in exchange of giving them information from spying on his family. Lucas embraced the chaos, showcasing his sadistic mind by setting deadly traps, conducting his own experiments, and even betraying the Connections by having their researchers killed. Unlike their son, Jack and Margaret are not inherently evil, as their actions are the result of Eveline's control. Throughout the game, they sometimes reveal that their true selves are still trapped beneath the infection, horrified by what they are being forced to do. They turn their home into a nightmarish prison, capturing victims and spreading Eveline's mold. Their actions draw on Ethan Winters, who becomes trapped in their world while searching for his missing wife. Throughout Resident Evil 7, Ethan confronts and defeats the Bakers one by one. In the end, the family is destroyed, and Eveline's control is broken. Eveline looks like any other normal young girl, but she was actually created in a lab by the Connections, a shadowy crime syndicate specializing in bioweapons. She was engineered as part of the E-Series program, designed to be the perfect infiltration weapon. Unlike previous bioorganic weapons, Eveline could blend into human society, appearing as a young girl while secretly infecting others with a mutagenic fungus known as the mold. She could release spores that infected individuals, linking them to a hive mind under her command. However, her design also included a psychological component. She was programmed to desire a family. Before the events of Resident Evil 7, she escapes containment aboard a tanker. After the ship crashes in Louisiana, Eveline is discovered and taken in by the Baker family. She infects them and forces them into the roles of her parents and brother, creating an imitation of the family she was designed to crave. She lures victims to the Baker estate, infects them, and either takes them in or discards them. Her influence creates horrifying molded creatures and grants the Bakers regenerative, near immortal abilities. Despite this, her mentality remains childlike. She lashes out when rejected and becomes increasingly unstable when her illusion of family is threatened. Despite her only wanting love and acceptance, her understanding of these concepts is warped by her design. To her, forcing people into obedience is the same as being loved. As Ethan uncovers the truth about her nature, Eveline rapidly ages due to a flaw in her design, becoming a decayed elderly figure. Ultimately, she is defeated when Ethan administers a specialized toxin, destroying her and breaking her control. Alcina Demitrscu was born in the early 20th century into European nobility. At some point, she was afflicted with a rare blood disease, which would later define her transformation. Her life changed when she came into contact with Mother Miranda, the leader of a cult-like group, experimenting with a parasitic organism known as the Cadu. Miranda implanted Demitrscu with a Cadu parasite, which granted her regenerative abilities, immense size, and near immortality. However, due to her pre-existing condition, the mutation had unique side effects, such as developing an extreme hunger for human blood and flesh. Rather than reject her, Miranda elevated Demitrscu into one of her 4 lords, giving her control over Castle Demitrscu and the surrounding region. Demitrscu fully embraced her new identity, ruling her castle like a feudal noble. She created her daughters, Bella, Cassandra, and Daniela, by infecting women with mutated insects, turning them into vampiric servants. Together, they preyed on villagers, capturing and torturing victims while maintaining a facade of high nobility. Demitrscu is fiercely devoted to Mother Miranda, seeing her as both a benefactor and a higher authority. At the same time, she values her own status and power, taking great pride in her lineage, castle, and daughters. She is driven by a desire to maintain control over her domain and to prove her worth among Miranda's inner circle. During the events of Resident Evil Village, Demitrscu encounters Ethan Winters and relentlessly pursues him through her castle after he disrupts her domain and kills her daughters. Eventually, Demitrscu mutates into a massive dragon-like creature after losing control, showcasing the instability of the Cadu. She is ultimately defeated by Ethan, dealing a blow to Mother Miranda's power and influence. Karl Heisenberg was originally a human villager living under the influence of Mother Miranda, who ruled the region through experimentation and control. At some point in his early life, he was captured and subjected to Miranda's Cadu parasite experiments. Heisenberg developed a unique mutation that granted him the ability to manipulate electromagnetic fields, allowing him to control metal and machinery. Following his transformation, Heisenberg was elevated to one of Miranda's 4 lords. He established his domain in a massive factory, where he used his powers to create mechanized soldiers known as soldats, cybernetic undead infused with metal components. Despite his status, Heisenberg secretly despised Miranda. He viewed her as a tyrant who had robbed him of his humanity and autonomy. While he appeared to be a loyal servant of hers, he was constantly plotting rebellion. His ultimate goal was to overthrow Miranda and take control of her power, potentially using her own experiments against her. During the events of Resident Evil Village, Heisenberg encounters Ethan and attempts to recruit him. Recognizing Ethan's resilience and connection to Miranda's plans, Heisenberg proposes an alliance to defeat her. However, his intentions are far from noble, as he plans to use Ethan and, more disturbingly, Ethan's daughter as weapons to achieve his goals. When Ethan refuses, Heisenberg becomes hostile, revealing his willingness to sacrifice anyone for his rebellion. While he opposes Miranda, he mirrors her cruelty, experimenting on others and building an army without regard for human life. Heisenberg eventually transforms into a massive mechanized monster, losing the final remnants of his humanity in pursuit of power. In the end, he is defeated by Ethan, ending his rebellion before it can begin. Mother Miranda was born in a remote European village in the late 19th century. At some point, her young daughter Eva died during the Spanish flu pandemic. Consumed by grief, Miranda became obsessed with finding a way to bring her child back. This obsession led her to discover the megamycete, a massive fungal organism hidden beneath the village. The megamycete had the ability to store and replicate consciousness, effectively preserving the memories and essence of those who died. Through years of experimentation, Miranda infected herself with the megamycete's mold, gaining immortality, regenerative abilities, and the power to shapeshift. However, her true goal remained the same: to resurrect Eva. To achieve this, she began experimenting on villagers, searching for a suitable vessel capable of housing her daughter's consciousness. Miranda created the Cadu parasite, which derived from the megamycete, and she used it to transform subjects into powerful mutants. This process produced her 4 lords, allowing her to become even more powerful. While these individuals gained extraordinary abilities, they were ultimately failures in Miranda's eyes, as none could serve as a perfect host for Eva. At some point in Miranda's past, she once encountered Oswell E. Spencer, inspiring him with her research into biological evolution. This encounter indirectly led to the creation of the Umbrella Corporation. In Resident Evil Village, Miranda's plan is seemingly nearing its end. She targets Rosemary Winters, believing her to be the perfect vessel for Eva due to her unique biology. This drives Ethan to fight her and her servants head-on to rescue his daughter. Ultimately, Miranda is defeated by Ethan, and her centuries-long plan finally comes to an end. Victor Gideon began as a researcher within the Umbrella Corporation prior to the 1998 Raccoon City incident, working directly on T-virus development. Deeply devoted to Spencer's ideals of human evolution and godhood, Gideon idolized him, though he was never granted access to Spencer's most secret projects. Following the outbreak and Umbrella's eventual collapse, Gideon disappeared before he could testify during the Raccoon trials, avoiding accountability entirely. In 2004, he resurfaced as the director of the Rhodes Hill Chronic Care Center, a facility once tied to the Spencer Foundation. Beneath its legitimate exterior, Gideon conducted decades of illegal experiments, eventually aligning himself with the connections. There, he became obsessed with replicating Spencer's hidden work, specifically memory transfer experiments in the mysterious Elpis project. Misinterpreting Elpis as a tool for domination, he spent over 20 years conducting human experimentation, kidnapping victims, infecting them with altered T-virus strains, and attempting to create clones capable of carrying what he believed to be Spencer's will. His fixation centered on Grace Ashcroft, whom he believed to be a successful vessel tied to Spencer's legacy. This obsession led him to orchestrate the killing of her mother and pursue her relentlessly over many years. In Resident Evil Requiem, Gideon finally captures Grace so he can finally access Elpis. Once he learns the truth that Elpis is not a weapon, but instead a cure to the T-virus, G-virus, and Ouroboros, he refuses to abandon his beliefs. He reinterprets it as a means to trigger global chaos, proving that his devotion to Spencer's ideology outweighs reality itself. Gideon had previously infected himself with a modified Nemesis parasite, granting him superhuman strength while preserving his intellect. Ultimately, he mutates further, becoming a huge and powerful monster, and is finally defeated by Leon S. Kennedy. Zeno is the most mysterious villain in the mainline Resident Evil games, as very little is known about his life in general. However, his resemblance to Albert Wesker strongly implies that he is either a clone or a product of the same eugenics-based Wesker project. This connection is further reinforced by his enhanced reflexes, physical superiority, and philosophical alignment with domination and control. Despite this, Zeno is not a direct copy, as he lacks some of Wesker's instability, presenting instead a calmer, more composed demeanor. By the time of Resident Evil Requiem, Zeno has risen to become a high-ranking figure within the Connections, wielding immense financial resources and influence, including ties to the US government. Zeno's primary goal revolves around Elpis, believing it to be the ultimate bioweapon capable of controlling minds. Zeno sees it as the key to establishing a new world order dominated by the Connections. His motivations mirror Wesker's ideology, but are more corporate in nature. He seeks not just evolution, but control over the systems that govern society itself. Throughout the game, Zeno manipulates Grace Ashcroft, believing her to be essential in unlocking Elpis. He presents himself as calm and almost sympathetic, even showing moments of vulnerability when discussing failed cloning experiments. However, this facade masks a deeper, ruthless individual willing to kill without hesitation. Ultimately, Zeno's major flaw is revealed: blind confidence. Upon finally accessing Elpis, he immediately injects himself, expecting godlike power. Instead, the substance is revealed to be an antiviral, stripping him of his abilities and leaving him vulnerable. In this weakened state, he is killed by Victor Gideon, who views him as an unworthy imitation of Spencer's vision. Thank you very much for watching this video, and if you enjoyed, make sure to leave a like, comment down below your thoughts on any of the Resident Evil villains I discussed in this video, and subscribe if you would like to see a part 2 or more videos like this one. Thank you again, and goodbye.